Everyone, and welcome to episode 180 of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Uriah Dawkins. Joining me tonight, Bailey Beeman, and welcome back, Jake. What's going on, bud?
Guys, glad to be back. It's been a while. It's been a whole new year, I think. I'm just happy to be here. Good to see you. How you guys?
Good. We got a full show sheet tonight, man, and I'm absolutely disheveled from this move, and my dog just driving my entire family insane. So, yeah, it's going great over here in the Beeman household. Fantastic.
All right, 50-minute show then. Let's do it.
Would you say an hour and 50-minute show? Yeah, let's get on.
Well, let's hop into it. News and nonsense. So we have, I've never seen this before, so this is awesome. Baker Slayfield. We got some Discord polls that I may not have seen. So what do you got?
Come on, man. He's been on an absolute tear.
Hell
Baker.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, Baker and Tampa, they roll Philly. Which, if anybody
dog
walked them, absolutely. If anybody caught the Pure Potential podcast, Paul's first episode with me, I picked every one of these games right somehow. So I'll be picking the divisional games, and you can hop in the Discord and get some free tips since all the betting bots hop in there anyway, right? But Baker Slayfield, yeah, just from what he did, and given the fact that he probably deserves a contract with Tampa, but
absolutely,
obviously he's going to get one from somebody if it's not Tampa. And I was wondering, just kind of looking at our rankings, which we'll get into a little bit later, but just looking at our rankings, I was just kind of curious about some of the quarterbacks that sat around him. And it was like Bryce Young, Stafford, Justin Fields, and Bryce Young edged him out by one vote. I had Jared Goff there. He completely obliterated him, 8-1 vote for Goff. But then Baker passed up Stafford 6-3, and then Fields 8-1. So people would like Baker over Stafford, and that's about it. But I think I'd definitely take him over Bryce Young, given what I've seen. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure.
I think I need a hefty plus to want to get Baker over Bryce personally. I know we have them relatively close in our own personal rankings, but I definitely think that I could still buy off the allure of the 101 from the 2023 draft. I voted for Bryce Young personally, but I could see myself doing it. I wouldn't be sad of doing it, but yeah, I definitely want a hefty plus if I'm going to get off of Bryce this fast. Because I probably got him for what, the 103-ish, 102 from last year.
Yeah, but you're definitely getting. I don't know. I think you definitely get a plus on top of it, right? Like most people are thinking that way, and I feel like I'd be kind of comfortable doing that in like a 2-year window if I'm, on the back end of like a rebuild or something. I think it would make some sense because I think Baker's young enough where if he stays with a team like Tampa and has weapons around him, like there's no reason he can't play another 2 to 5 years. Like that, the 5 is a stretch for sure, but like definitely think 2 good years is reasonable. And you could pencil in more given the right situation.
Yeah, I think he puts himself in a similar situation that we see with like Geno, right? Geno bought himself an additional 2 years basically, and there's a good chance that he's going to go back to being a backup quarterback potentially even next year. So it just really depends on the situation and how that contract is formed. I would also love to wait until Carolina hires a head coach before I make something like this happen, to be honest. If the right head coach situation lands in Carolina, I might be feeling like I want to stick around with Bryce a little bit longer.
Truthfully, Baker's still playing. There's no reason to rush this. Like something catastrophic could happen. So yeah, absolutely, True. Absolutely wait it out. But it's also worth kind of noting, talking about these two is definitely ironic, right? Considering that Baker Mayfield was with Carolina playing so terribly, and now he's playing well, and Bryce Young's with Carolina playing so terribly. It begs the question: is it a Carolina issue? You know what I mean? So, sure. Jake could have something there in terms of not completely giving up on Bryce. That it could come back around with him at some point. But it took a while for Baker, so it could be a roller coaster. You never know. But yeah, it kind of highlights whatever's going on in Carolina isn't optimal.
No, it's just not a front office right now that's making moves or has been making moves for years now that make any sense. I'd be pretty upset as a Carolina fan right now. So, all right. Next we have a trade: T-Law, Puka, 26 first for Chase, Tyreek, 25 second and 26 second. This is from Dynasty Zoltan on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter. He has a poll here saying, would you prefer Puka Nacua or Marvin Harrison Jr.? 64.5% say Marvin Harrison Jr. and 35.5% say Puka Nacua. I feel like, well, let's get to the trade. So how are you guys feeling about this? Assuming Superflex, which is probably what we make, we have T-Law, Puka, and a first, Chase Reek, and 2 seconds.
You're
I
muted.
can't hear you, Billy.
Yeah, you're muted.
The first is a bit far out. It's in 26.
26.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Dude, I love how you caught yourself there too with the trade poll on Twitter, because I was saying shit and I clearly wasn't coming through, but you heard me. You knew you felt it. You felt my energy. I love that. Yeah, no, I think it's I think it's an interesting trading context, like looking at the poll as well, because with what Puka just did, you obviously the whole argument now is that's what you hope Marvin Harrison becomes, right? So it's kind of shocking to see Marvin Harrison, edge him out so significantly in the votes there. But yeah, T-Law, Puka, 26 first, Chase, Reek, 25 second, 26 second. This is obviously going to require some context here, but I do like the Chase side in this deal, because I still like Chase plenty more than Puka. I'm a little worried about T-Law, and I do like all the pieces on this other side, kind of making it whole from that 26 first. But I know about this trade a little bit, and I know that the side that's giving up a quarterback, not getting one back, is pretty comfortable in their quarterback situation, which definitely matters.
Yeah, I feel like in a weird position to talk about this trade because it is my trade. So
well, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, so I guess I'll put a little bit of context, kind of what Billy was alluding to. I found myself in a situation where I had 3 very, very viable starting quarterbacks, and I really felt like I could try and shop one of them around to hopefully get some more elite assets on my team. And that's really what I wanted to do, especially coming off of a championship. I really didn't want to necessarily retool. I wanted to see myself continue to compete in the following year. And I found that one of the weakest spots in my team was really looking at my running back room, and I didn't want to invest highly in running back. And so how can I do that is by putting in additional premium wide receivers. So I found myself in a situation of going through this conversation with the other owner of just trying to find a middle ground. And I felt that giving up that 26 first so far in the future, but also acquiring what I think could potentially be an early 25 second and potentially even an early 26 second could find me in a situation where those are 2 seconds that I might haven't even been able to trade for that 112 or 111 potentially in 2026. So I almost see that those 2 things are a wash. You can say to yourself, Chase Reek for T-Law Puka is pretty even for most people, but honestly, I found myself losing a lot of trust in T-Law from a lot of the things that I've seen, not just statistically, but a lot of his decision making and specifically pocket awareness, I thought was significantly worse in the second half of the year, which I thought was one of the major reasons why he actually got injured the way he did. Yeah, the freak roll up on his leg had nothing to do with him, but there were some other injuries throughout the rest of the season that I didn't find were well evaluated in my mind and put me in a weird spot. But I think that this portion of the conversation is really tailored around Puka and his value. And it's tough because I want to trade Puka as a guy that I picked up as a free agent for an elite asset like Jamar Chase, like a Tyreek Hill. At the end of the day, it stinks to let go of a guy who I think will still continue to do this next season. But if I can get that next elite asset, I'd rather do that. And so going back to the poll, it really does make it really challenging because the idea of an elite prospect isn't an elite asset. And that's one of the biggest, I think, caveats to Dynasty fantasy football that a lot of people have an issue with, is that just because an elite prospect is an elite prospect, once they find the landing spot, let's say it is Carolina, are they still an elite asset? I have a difficult time saying that. And so this conversation, I think, looks great right now. But if he lands in Arizona, I want Marvin Harrison. But if he lands in Carolina or maybe even Chicago and their quarterback situation is completely messed up, maybe that's not where I want to be. So it's just one of those types of dichotomies that I think people need to kind of surface when they are responding to votes like this, that Puka is an asset that feels like it has a lot of longevity to it, potentially with as long as Stafford's there for the next 2 to 3 seasons.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, initially, I've always been like in Superflex, the quarterback side of things. And I think I still am here slightly, just because I'm not really sure about Reek longevity here. But seeing what Puka did, I mean, I assume that if Puka didn't land with the Rams, kind of like what you were saying about Marvin Harrison Jr., if Puka didn't land with the Rams and he didn't have Matt Stafford, would Puka be Puka this year? I definitely have my questions about that. But he is there, and Stafford is there, and McVay is there, and I think it's close, but I think I'll probably stick with the T-Law Puka in the first still, but just barely.
Yeah, I think it was a great trade for both parties, honestly. I think that thankfully it was with someone that I'm friendly with. We're good friends, and it wasn't a trade that I felt like either of us were screwing each other over, even though, the rest of the league felt otherwise, which is always hilarious to me when, everyone has commentary about trades that happen after they're done, but yet no one was trying to get that trade done while we were talking. So it's like no one was sending me premier assets for Puka. They were sending me absolute dog shit for like the last 6 months. So it's like I don't know what you want me to do about it, So it's fun.
Yeah. No, it's a great trade all around, really.
Yeah, no, it looks good.
All right, Nico Collins value. Nico Collins is one of those things I don't think anybody really called. Nobody that I know really was like, hey, Nico Collins, top 12 wide receiver or whatever the hell he ended up with this year, which was really amazing, or even that whole entire offense to begin with. But do you think that people are ignoring Tank Dell's impact on Nico Collins' output? I think is the question here.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I'm pulling up his splits here right now, but just looking at his last couple of games, 6 for 96 and a touchdown, 9 for 195 and a touchdown, 7 for 80, 4 for 18 and a touchdown. In a tough game that they had there with the Browns in December. But yeah, I just think, not Puka, sorry. Tank Dell is a little bit victim of circumstance here and being forgotten, like kind of what he was doing when he was available. And Nico, of course, was definitely producing a little bit, but he's obviously taken over a wide receiver one role that I don't think would be available to him otherwise. And I think we saw that it wasn't available to him consistently otherwise. So we've seen his KTC value skyrocket, right?
God, I think KTC.
Yeah, of course. I think that it's just ignoring, the fact that Tank Dell, a guy who was handpicked by CJ Stroud and the team, will be coming back, is an elite route runner, is a dynamic player, is his guy. And I just think that Nico is kind of in line to take a step back. And I'm listening to redraft more redraft based podcasts and stuff like that are looking forward to next year. You can see them kind of pushing Nico into that, like above the Michael Pittman area and just kind of, nearly a top. I think they were talking about both of them could be top 12 and 15 wide receivers, which I think is possible, but also is setting the expectations a little high.
Yeah, I think to this point, it's a super nuanced situation where player availability affects target share. And so we're going to see kind of what Billy's point is here is inflated statistics due to a limited wide receiver room. Sure, the Noah Brown story was great throughout the regular season when he was able to pocket in, but he just doesn't equate to that relationship that CJ Stroud and Tank Dell have. I think one of the biggest things that is unique about the Nico Collins situation is it does kind of remind us a lot of that third-year breakout from someone like a Devontae Adams, where a lot of people were also poo-pooing that reality of making him into an elite asset moving forward in a dynasty or fantasy community. I just can't say that I think that the film matches those two players up at all. I think that I don't see a lot of elite qualities out of Nico, except for his like long stride that really helps him get away from corners. Great. At the end of the day, I need players to be a little bit more aggressive in the air instead of just making like open fields, huge catches due to their athleticism, especially when I want to see them have, you know, long-standing dynasty value at the wide receiver position. So that's kind of where I sit.
Yeah, I don't have a whole ton to add. I mean, I kind of agree with you. You know, when you have CJ Stroud talking about Tank Dell being his best friend and all that, and just what Tank Dell was doing when he was healthy was pretty impactful. And yeah, and maybe it's just because Nico Collins didn't do anything the 2 years previous. Like, really, it's really hard to buy into Nico Collins being a top player right now, even though like years ago we're supposed to kind of give wide receivers that 3-year window to break out. And Nico Collins hit the mark there, but I'm totally with Billy and Jake here, and the fact that if Tank comes back healthy again next year, which he will, I think Nico Collins will take a hit. So here's the trade, though: Nico Collins and a 212 for Waddle.
Yeah, this is a deal that rides, you know, a lot of the acclaim that's going around about Nico that I think you can get in what I believe is an elite asset like Jalen Waddle. I know a lot of people are dying down on him, and I think that has a lot to do with his injuries towards the end of the season that he was playing through. And I think you have to take advantage of situations like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just pulling up the splits, trying to like think to myself why they were the way they were, and forgetting that a lot of the games, not a lot, but a significant portion of the games that Tank Dell missed, CJ Stroud also missed, which were not going to be great games for anybody. So those splits are not very helpful, I think, in this conversation. But I do think I would take the Waddle side here still, just given I think the long-term asset that he'll be and everything that we all just said.
Yeah, I agree. All right, this another one's a poll from Twitter. Talking about Chris Olave's dynasty ranking, and this guy said he's only going to accept questions or comments in the form of memes, which I like. But what are you guys' take on Olave's value right now? So this trade was Chris Olave, Rashee Rice, and a 25 third for Anthony Richardson in a 306. Superflex, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
this is my trade. So if you wanna throw your opinion in the ring before I say anything,
I will go ahead and go with the quarterback for now, only because like I love Olave. Like whatever his dynasty value is, his rank is as a community, I think whatever their opinion of him, I would probably still be a little bit higher on. But the opposite goes for Rashee Rice. Like I like Rashee Rice, and I kind of like how he broke out, how Jake was actually noticing his participation in the routes run, target share, and all that stuff pretty early on, like week 3, week 4. Like he was saying, hey, Rashee is going to be the guy there. And actually, I mean, nobody really was. That's just kind of how the offense has been. Like, you know, as far as like, hey, there's not going to be a top 12 wide receiver coming out of Kansas City anytime soon. It's just the way it goes. But I do think that Rashee Rice's value probably right now is higher than I think it should be. So using that to your advantage to go ahead and get a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, even though I'm not entirely sold on him, I think that's probably where I'd go. I think I'd be leveraging the increased price in Rice to get something done like that.
Yeah, I think you're getting rid of two assets that potentially could be at the highest tier of their current value. And by that, I don't see either Olave or Rice really getting much higher in dynasty value ever again. And that isn't because I'm low on Olave or low on Rice. I just think that they kind of have their own ceilings given situation. The Derek Carr situation obviously hurts wide receivers. I won't get into that rant. I promise.
You love Derek Carr.
And I think the Kansas City offense, kind of like what Uriah was talking about, does limit Rashee Rice as well. his output this year has a lot to do with also touchdown participation, which I just don't see taking the same positive trajectory as it has been in the second half of the season. At the end of the day, you're able to even tack on a third on your side, which I think is pretty incredible. I personally want the elite quarterback in this situation, especially knowing how your build is going on this specific team. I think it also makes sense. And you've been, unfortunately, kind of grinding for a top tier quarterback, and it looks like you finally got one. So congratulations on that. Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think there's still some question marks around it, but I do view it that way. And yeah, I look at this kind of through the lens of what you guys were saying is the limitations to Olave and Rice from, you know, an upside perspective. And as I kind of thought about this, I think I lowered Olave in my rankings a bit. I think I pushed Puka up a bit, just kind of thinking this through and how I really feel about it all. It kind of helps it really does help having your rankings and making kind of these moves and going through those thought exercises. But I do see those limitations. And I've always said this about Chris Olave. As much as I like him, I think he's limited from being a wide receiver one, just as the player he is, right? Like he doesn't quite offer that upside that other wide receivers do.
Yeah, I unfortunately agree. And even when he's thrown into the situation like he was this season, where Michael Thomas misses half the season, that target share exists, but his actual participation with those targets doesn't necessarily increase him into that wide receiver one conversation, even though he has a quarterback who's tossing the ball close to 450 times. Like he still doesn't have that, unfortunately. And I don't see how that changes moving forward unless they have another asset that matches his skill level.
Yeah, I do think Kansas City tries to reload a wide receiver a little bit, which is going to impact Rice. But in this league, you're right, I was chasing a quarterback, and I felt like this was my best chance to finally settle in on one. And, you know, I've always had a solid surplus of wide receivers, which is certainly dwindling, but I did acquire, I think, like the 107 or something in a trade. So I felt like I had some room to give up some of these kind of assets and potentially retool a little bit in that department with that pick. So there was a plan and a thought process in place throughout the whole thing, knowing I was giving up some really good assets. You know, both sides have very good assets. It's just situational and context, you know.
All right. So this is topical for actually, I mean, not just us, as we are heading into starting our 4th listener league, which is awesome. You know, going back to starting D1, kind of having a hard time filling out DU2, DU3 came together, and then our 4th listener league was filled pretty much instantly. We have some repeat players, but we have some new guys, and you know, it had it had come up about whether or not we should have a 3rd round reversal for our draft. And so this is, you know, kind of a dynasty basic thing that we kind of set out for with this podcast to kind of educate people on dynasty compared to redraft and what it is. And I know that in most redraft fantasy football leagues, they don't have any 3rd round reversal. Not typically, right? Typically, you have number 1 goes 1 through 12, and then back around 1 through 12 in the snake order. Well, with 3rd round reversal, what you have is, let's see here, from Keeper. It's basically what it sounds like. It's the exact same thing as a regular snake draft, except the direction of the draft reverses at the start of the 3rd round. So basically, the guy picking first gets the pick first. The guy picking 12th picks 12th, and then he gets the first pick in the 2nd round, all the way back to the guy picking first, who has like the 2-12. And instead of him getting the 3-1, it goes back to the guy who picked 12th to begin with. I think when this was brought up in the Discord or the chat for should we be doing a 3rd round reversal, I'm not entirely sure that everybody knew kind of what it meant. I think it's an interesting way to make sure that the person picking first gets their very first pick of the draft and a really high pick come to 2nd round, but the guy who's picking 12th doesn't actually get hosed because he gets to go back to back in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Do you guys think it matters?
I think it matters for sure. It definitely affects It affects a couple of things. It affects, by all means, your third round pick. Like, obviously, if I have the first overall pick and I want to trade my third in a dynasty startup, like my third just lost a shit ton of value. I just lost 12 whole players worth of value in that one pick. And there's a lot of reason behind that, because the reality is the way in which a standard snake draft would work is that 12th pick would instead be at the 312 that sits with that person who has the 12th overall pick starting at the very start of the draft. Now, it's supposed to, in the grand scheme of things, balance things out. And I think it actually does a very good job. When you compare roster valuation, it does a relatively decent job when computers are drafting, like true computers, like bots, not humans. At the end of the day, if you know what you're doing and you can gain value from whatever position you're in, you're going to gain value from whatever position you're in. So the way that I kind of see it is, it's a great way to put this almost like filter on the draft for people to think that they're getting better value for their draft picks, because technically they are, but you could easily see that person who has the 12th overall pick botch it. We've seen it many times. And so for me, in the grand scheme of things, like I'm all for providing this like allure of fairness. But if you're not necessarily at the same level as someone else in understanding value, and you're taking, let's say, I don't know, a David Njoku at the 3-1, like you're screwing yourself, right? Like you're putting yourself in a bad situation, even if she's your tight end 3 in your mind, right? Like that's kind of the way that you have to look at it. And it's the draft is the draft one way or another. It just kind of changes the allure of pick valuation from your own standpoint, and then trying to then negotiate in your mind what that value looks like as it kind of tacks on from that recycle from the third round.
Yeah, no, I think it's a super interesting conversation. I think I like where you took it, where it's like the perception of the fairness. You can kind of take advantage of it depending on, how you view the draft and what you know about the values of your own picks and the adjustment of those values based on the third round reversal. Personally, I guess I view it similarly in that, to me, it's just a different strategy that I have to adjust to, really, when I play that way. But I don't love it, because I like picking at the back end of the draft and getting my double picks. So it's like, I don't love the fact that gets altered in the third round. Either way, whether I'm at the front or the back end, but it definitely changes those back end picks a little bit. Sleeper itself even says, literally reading verbatim, the differences aren't that noticeable, but we believe this makes your draft even fairer for all teams, as it allows the first team to get an elite player, but gives later teams a chance to get more upper tier players in return. Which I guess, you're still like, I still think that, the back end team goes 12, 13, 25, then the 48, 49, like that's still that's a long time to wait, man. Like, I don't know. I still think if you're not, like Jake's saying, if you're not on top of your draft, if you're not a sharp player and you don't hit on these picks, it doesn't matter if you technically got like a little bit earlier pick. If you miss on 25, you're waiting a long time to get to 48. And now it's a long tumble down the hill. So I don't know. I just don't care. I think that it's very similar both ways. And I guess I'm just a traditionalist and I enjoy the normal snake draft.
It's why you got to pick 107. It doesn't matter. Actually, that's a strategy that I do like, is picking in the middle of the round, because then like there's never you're never really getting left out of a run. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like run on a tight end, run on a quarterback, whatever. You can always sneak in there and like not get left behind. So
there's some research actually that I think shows that the 108 is one of the more valuable picks. Yeah. That because like you're like centered, but you kind of don't have to wait too long between those picks. That like you have you just end up getting like good value compared to everybody else. So
yeah, and if you're David, you end up trading up and getting like the 103 and the 108 in the first round. So you have like Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts or a Patrick
Deshaun
Mahomes
Watson.
or Deshaun Watson. Yeah, that's a different year, but yes, I'm sure that's happened to him before.
Oh, I've seen it. It has. I know.
He's a beast when it comes to that.
He
Trading
really
up. Yeah.
so
I don't know if I've ever been in a draft with him that he hasn't done it, and he hasn't done it yet. And I'm kind of surprised that he hasn't moved his pick yet in this draft.
Is he in DU4?
DU4, yeah.
Oh, awesome. I'm excited to see what that draft results look like.
It's going to be interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, by the way, all the trades we talked about so far are from DU leagues, all three of them.
Which has been exciting. The whole move to sleeper, I've kind of dragged my feet about it, but I've already noticed activity kind of increase in some of the leagues. So yeah, shout out Beeman for putting your foot down and making it happen.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, always. I love doing that stuff. I'm getting a little bit more organized this year with everything. So I have been pretty organized in general, but I'm continuing to get more organized, like I said. So it's gone pretty well. It's exciting. So yeah, with that said, we've been talking a lot about DU rankings. Jake and I put a lot of work over the past month or so here to build out some pretty comprehensive rankings that I just closed out for some reason on my screen, but some pretty comprehensive rankings for our Discord members, which our Discord's free, so you can just hop in there anytime you want and gain access to this. It's a Google Sheet with a lot of cool stuff in it, and we had a suggestion in our Discord a while back, and it was something I had been thinking about for a while, but a welcome suggestion from one of our members. It was either Textbook or Joe or somebody in there was saying, we should have, in general, there should be more rankings that are split between rebuilder and contender type rankings, right? Because it's really difficult to capture all that context, even in split rankings, but it's really difficult to capture that context when it's just, one set of rankings. So Jake and I built out, a sheet that both has a tab for contender, rebuilder. We did tiers. We have a positional tiers tab as well in there. That's really just following the rebuild sheet right now. Just kind of testing out, seeing what we want to do there. Also has a week over week change column, which shows you kind of, over each update, how far the players have been moving. So it gives you a lot of good information. I think it's fun to look at. It's good to have in front of you when you're drafting. But more to the point, Jake and I plan to put out a series over the next couple weeks here, going over kind of just our thought process on how kind of we're building out these rankings with each position. What we prioritize, what we think about, and explain kind of how we think rankings should be utilized, like how, just the general Dynasty player can use rankings themselves, make them themselves if they want to, just all kind of sorts of things that encompass what we think rankings should be and mean. And I think the tiers are very important to us, kind of trying to get away from just like linear ranking. And there's a lot more that I'm going to be doing with this. And, we have the 24 picks in there. And we're going to add in, obviously, the rookies and then add in the 25 picks. And we have a lot of stuff going on with the ranking sheet. So I wanted to highlight that real quick. And then I kind of wanted to walk through our top 5 at each position and just see if any of us have any comments about them. Because I do think that there are some interesting items in there. Fortunately, we're not live. And that's because I didn't get these in the right format to pop up on the screen, but I can do it post-edit, which is nice. So I'm just going to pop them up on my screen, and we're going to talk about them. And we're going to talk about the running backs first, which I think personally are the most interesting, just with what we have here. So looking at the top 5 running backs per the DU rankings, we have Jahmyr Gibbs at running back 1 overall, Bijan Robinson 2, Breece Hall 3, Christian McCaffrey 4, and Jonathan Taylor 5. Jahmyr Gibbs is spicy. How do y'all feel about that?
That's me. I think I'm driving up the average. So I'll just openly state that, in his situation, I think he gains a lot of value almost in his split back type use case. I do think that minimal usage or a lowered amount of usage actually improves the value of a dynasty running back, in my opinion. So a situation where we'll go back to some additional work that Billy has done in the past. You are a godsend. But basically looking at, running backs that have over 300 touches in a season, seeing how their performance basically takes a nosedive after that season, where I think it was only Jamal Lewis and maybe one other running back. It's probably Derrick Henry, if I had to guess off the top of my head.
Charles. It was Charles, I think.
Jamal Charles? Okay.
I think so. It may have been Lewis. I can't remember exactly, but you might be right. But yes, Derrick Henry.
And Derrick Henry were able to basically then continue to have very productive seasons post that, which makes me scared of wanting to touch wide receiver as running backs that I'm so glad this is not live. Running backs that find themselves kind of in that peripheral of being true workhorses. I know that the game is also changing in this regard, where we're probably going to see less and less workhorses. We're going to see more Jahmyr Gibbs. We're going to see more Devon A. Chains. We're going to see more quicker running backs that fit into a specific build better, which I think will also help with that longevity situation. We can see a Gibbs, if he stays healthy, playing until he's 28, 29, 30 at a higher level, in my opinion, whereas running backs that find themselves like a Breece Hall in a running back situation where I think next year where he's truly healthy, he's going to be probably getting close to 300 touches if he is healthy throughout the entire season, which puts me in a situation where I currently want to have Gibbs over Breece, even though I think that Breece might score technically more fantasy points than him next year because he will have more touches. I still think that longevity is really important when I'm trying to value dynasty running backs.
Gibbs, I mean, I do think to Jake's point in that, like, the usage, and it's more of what it is. Obviously, it's not like the size or anything. It's more the usage that Jahmyr Gibbs gets is beneficial to longevity. I think you see that already with like Alvin Kamara, right? Like very similar kind of usage style player, and he's 28, 29 years old, and you can see that he's a viable option still. Not necessarily the option in fantasy he once was, but he's certainly an effective running back and an effective player in the NFL. And he's going to get a contract next year. He's going to play. He's going to definitely be utilized, I think, next year, also as a fantasy asset. So I think you see that kind of same trajectory for a Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's kind of why I think Jake has him so high. And it's not just Jake driving it up. I have him one spot below Bijan. They're back to back. So I think both of us are very close there. To having Jahmyr Gibbs running back 1 overall. So I respect it, and I like where our rankings are at. I think that's very reflective. The only other one I want to talk about here is Christian McCaffrey at 4. If we're thinking about rebuild, and I looked at your specific rankings too to make sure it wasn't just me driving him down or anything. Both of us have it set this way. If we're thinking about rebuild, why do we not have Jonathan Taylor over Christian McCaffrey? And why is Christian McCaffrey not a tier 2 running back at 27 years old? I'm sorry, 27 years old. I mean, 3 years older than any other of our top 5 running backs, or 4 of the other top 5.
So I would just say, just given the internalized conversation, sorry, you're right, just between us, because we were actually doing this exercise, one of the main things that I was thinking about was this is still a very high-end tier 1 sell situation for a rebuilder. So I think showing that value as to where he is currently and how you could then trade him is kind of how I was valuing him when I was looking at the quote unquote rankings and then tiering. By all honesty, any point of this offseason, my man's going to tier 2. Like as soon as basically as soon as the playoffs are done, like it's like retirement home in my mind for Christian McCaffrey. No offense to him, but
we're getting into the process conversation here a little bit, right? Which I think is totally, I think it's a fun conversation. I think it's an interesting conversation for people as well. But it's like, if we're thinking ahead, this is what I keep struggling with when I keep looking at him. Like, if I'm thinking ahead, then I should have him lower. Like, he should just be lower, like already. If I'm saying like rebuilding wise, but I mean, you do bring up a good point in that his value is going to remain significantly high. And you need to thread that needle where he still remains in that range above, the rookie pick still, but still I just really feel like Jonathan Taylor should probably be over him. Maybe he's still a tier 1 asset, but maybe Jonathan Taylor should surpass him.
Agreed.
In the rankings. That's but when I was looking at the rankings, I'm like, but there's these quarterbacks here, and how do I put Jonathan Taylor over him? And the only reason CMC is there is because he scores so many damn points. So It's like, I have to truly believe that CMC is no longer going to score those points to push him down, and that's the dilemma, and that's a fine line that I struggle with, and I think it's an interesting topic. Okay, hopping into the wide receivers, top 5 Dynasty wide receivers per the DU rankings. Wide receiver 1, no surprise, Justin Jefferson. 2, Jamar Chase. 3, AJ Brown. 4, CeeDee Lamb, and 5, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the only tier 2 wide receiver in the top 5. Puka left out. I think people might have some issue with that. He's wide receiver 8. I checked earlier in the DU rankings. I think being weighed down a little bit by Jake. But the 2 here to talk about, I would say probably are CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver 4. Does he belong at wide receiver 3 over AJ Brown? And Amon-Ra, does he belong in tier 1?
Yeah. CD should definitely be wide receiver 3 over AJ Brown, based on age and all that.
I think
and based on the fact that you're a Cowboys fan. No, I think I'm leaning.
What am I saying? Yeah.
Go. Sorry.
For sure. And you said no surprise, Justin Jefferson over Chase, but I'm wondering, why you're so confident in that. I don't want to be all Stephen A about it. Why are you so confident? Look,
great.
My dude Chase, I know who his quarterback's going to be next year and the year after. No, who's throwing the ball? Justin Jefferson next year.
I mean,
I know it doesn't matter that much because he's so good, but
no, and so is Jamar Chase, and Jamar Chase was certainly effective with Jake Browning, but I think I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm quite confident that Justin Jefferson was damn near great every single game he played, no matter who he played with. Josh Dobbs, didn't matter whether they threw in. I mean, even Jaren Hall, I think got him a pass. He couldn't get the ball more than 5 yards to anybody else, but he got it to Justin Jefferson. and then Nick Mullins was slinging it to him, all over the place. So I think, personally, the kind of receiver, they're both great. Jamar Chase is a little bit more, I think, explosive and wins off of athleticism, whereas Justin Jefferson is more of a technically sound receiver, but he also has plenty of athleticism and he's plenty dynamic. So I think that he's just stylistically more of what I want as a receiver, like real life. And I think that he is kind of the perfect combination of skills and traits that you want out of a wide receiver. And yeah, he wins all. I mean, it's kind of proven. The proof is in the pudding, as they say, right? Like every game, he's there showing up, and I do think Jamar Chase, while he has as much upside for sure as Justin Jefferson, there are games where he disappears for sure. Like there are games where he's just nowhere to be found, and I don't think that in comparing these two, 1 and 2 elite assets, I think that there's a little bit more consistency in Justin Jefferson's game, despite QB play, which I think we overrate. The level to which it won't get right. Like I think these situations get right quicker than not. And also, I think that we're acting like Kirk Cousins is not going to be back there, but he certainly could be back there too. Like there's a world where he comes back on another 1-year contract. I mean, that's his whole MO. So long-winded, but that's where I lean on Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase.
Yeah, that's fair. I definitely lean the same way, so I won't even go down that path. But I do think that the really interesting person here or player is AJ Brown, and let's talk a little bit about him. I've now seen a couple of times throughout the last few weeks, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown finding himself outside of the top 8, finding himself outside of the top 12, sometimes touching, even top 15. Kind of where do we see kind of his trajectory going, given, some of the on-field and off-field situations with him and his own teammates? Do we see him potentially staying in Philly? If he does leave Philly, does that change kind of our valuation and where we see him playing? Do we think he's quote unquote QB proof, kind of similar to this Justin Jefferson situation? And that's kind of like where I want to sit with it. But first and foremost on the sheet, I know we have thinking about there was, I forgot who it was, but someone posted within the Discord some early rankings for 2024 with a ton of rookies up in the like top 7. It was like Neighbors, Harrison Jr., and I want to say Rome Adunze, all sitting in like top 7, top 8, which was pretty wild. And AJ Brown was sitting, I think, at like 13 or 14. So in comparison to where we're sitting, kind of where's your logic there, Billy, Uriah?
You mean, well, let me clarify the question. You mean in terms of them falling outside of or AJ Brown falling outside of their top 12 versus him being like our wide receiver 3 still?
Yeah, well, being your wide receiver 3 and being my wide receiver 4. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
No,
yeah. I said our.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No. Fair. I mean, yes. I think that's very close. But he will be my wide receiver 4 by the end of the day, because I do agree that CD should edge him out there, and I see exactly kind of how I would do it. But why I'm not so low on AJ Brown? I'm just not so. I guess I'm not so scared off of the second half of the season. I think a lot of it clearly has to do with the coaching. We're seeing a lot of signs that Sirianni is not necessarily the adult in the room at all times, which, when you're a head coach, that doesn't necessarily fly. And I think, when you're not winning, everything kind of falls apart, and those flaws really show themselves and start eating away at the culture. And, you see these, the best players on your team get frustrated. It's not a shock. So I think a lot of it is stemming from that. So I'm just not, I don't know, like, do we just think AJ Brown fell off all of a sudden? Is that what the idea is? You know what I mean? Like that doesn't sell to me. So I could see him taking like a slight hit in their rankings here, especially because CD has been so good, so dominant, such a target hog, doesn't have any kind of competition in the way that that AJ Brown does. And he also doesn't deal with any of the volume concerns that AJ Brown does, right? So there's definitely some team context, I think, that comes into play there that I wasn't necessarily accounting for with this ranking. But I can't really see pushing him below like Amon-Ra St. Brown, because I see them very similarly in terms of like target competition. But I think AJ Brown is just a much better player and demands, more valuable targets, I would say. So that's how I see it. But yeah, what do you think, Uriah?
No, I'm with you guys on having him at least in your top 5 for sure. I mean, Jefferson Chase, flip flop him however you want. You got to put CD in there at 3, and then Amon-Ra and AJ Brown, I believe, should be your 4 and 5. And however you want to put it, it's fine with me. There's really, you can make an argument either way for one being at 4, the other one being at 4, and I probably wouldn't disagree either way. So to have him outside of the top 4 or outside the top 12 is just ridiculous. And maybe the person who posted those rankings was just trying to highlight maybe how good the incoming rookies could be, but I think it was a little premature to be ranking them as such. I think you guys did good.
Yeah, I think I'm going to need to revisit Puka and see if he should make his way a little bit higher. But that said, the last thing I want to say is that Amon-Ra, again, he's a tier 2 receiver, but he's a tier 2 receiver who outscored a lot, like 2-3 of the top 5 receivers in points per game this past season. So I don't know if that's fair to Amon-Ra St. Brown. So that's something. And I'm wondering if the tier itself should expand.
Yep.
Even maybe past Amon-Ra, just thinking about like a Puka, like is he coming close to that tier 1? So it's a thought, something I'm thinking about here as we move along. Try to quicken it up here with these rankings going into the tight ends real fast. I don't know if there's going to be a bunch of disagreement here, but Mark Andrews at tight end 1, Sam Laporta 2, Trey McBride 3, TJ Hawkinson 4, George Kittle 5. There's plenty to talk about here. Trey McBride, that's not a snub. Don't even come at me with that. Uriah 3 is a great spot for him, but I think
that's where I had him.
Good. I love it. The main one to mention is Travis Kelce. He's not in the top 5.
Yeah. We talked about this, me and you, I think 2 weeks ago. I just look, until you guys reach the ripe old age of 37 or 38, you'll never understand what this man's going through. And you know, you got Taylor Swift just sucking the life out of him. He's tired.
Figuratively and literally.
Literally.
You said it, not me. Oh, bless his heart. I mean, shit, he has better stuff to do at home. Right? I mean, before that, you know, football was probably the best thing he had going on in his life. Now he's got Taylor Swift. So, you know, I'd probably slack off at work a little bit too.
This fucking guy.
But no, he's old, man. He's old, and he's been the entire offense. He and Mahomes for what 5 years.
Yeah,
he doesn't have a whole lot of help. He had Tyreek Hill there for a little bit, helping him out, but he can't do it on his own, and his body's tired. He's not a top 5 tight end anymore.
Strong,
and that's okay.
I think
that's okay.
We clearly agree.
Yeah,
we clearly agree. All right, moving on real quick here to our top 5 QBs. QB1 still Patrick Mahomes. I'm wondering if Josh Allen should edge him out just with the rushing ability there. But these are all tier 1 guys. Josh Allen, QB2, Jalen Hurts, QB3, QB4, Lamar Jackson, QB5, CJ Stroud. I think just the rushing ability with those middle 3 there is what is pushing them over CJ Stroud. But it's so damn close, man. I moved CJ Stroud down a couple spots for sure. He moved down 2 spots in this last update. And it was me just kind of not just me. I don't know if Jake had these same thoughts, but it was definitely me thinking that the rushing ability is going to weigh him down slightly, or the lack of not rushing ability, but the lack of rushing production.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that was differentiating us was the Lamar Jackson situation. And honestly, like, I think just looking at things, I still want Lamar probably over Jalen. And Jalen is probably that guy who's tinkering around the 4 or 5, and Stroud should probably move ahead of him in my mind. And so, you know, that's what's great about this process, is that every single week we see a little bit more, and we can try and adjust to what the market looks like and to what we are also seeing. I think the rushing upside does obviously help, especially in Jalen's situation, push or not. You know, getting 6 points per rushing touchdown is going to liven your points per game up. Like, it is what it is, especially when you're playing in a league with only 4 points per passing touchdown, like most traditional leagues are. Like, that's what you're going to be dealing with. So longevity wise, I think I have Stroud probably going above Hurts, Jackson going to 3. And, you know, I really do see that Mahomes Allen situation being a flip flop depending on, you know, the roster construction. Right now, I think roster construction tells me that, yeah, Buffalo is slightly more appealing, but I still think that the actual talent at the end of the day, and him only being 28 years old, he's a quarterback. He still probably has another 11 years left. Like, I want Mahomes probably over Allen, just personally.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I think it's a good point as we kind of round that out there. You know, thinking about how, you know, every day your rankings can adjust a little bit, right? And you can come up with like a different reason why one guy should be over another. So they're very fluid, and they should be taken with some grain of salt in general. Like, it's more of a guide. It's not, you know, it's not the end all be all by any means. But also, you know, I think, you know, we were talking about those really early rankings being absolutely outrageous. And it's, you know, something I keep trying to tell myself, and something that I think about with this, and both with the, you know, with the rookie scouting too. It's like, being first and being fast is really great. Like, it's, you know, great to get out there and you're going to get a lot of engagement, but being thorough is way better. And I think that's kind of what our process is partly trying to embody, and certainly what I try to embody with the film study. I'm trying to like do it right and get, you know, the right information out there, not just like get my rankings out there and be hot, you know what I mean? And have everybody look at them. Cause that's obviously, you have neighbors in your top 12, you know, and you push AJ Brown out, you're about to get some eyes on your work, which, you know, no shame, do your thing. But I just want to make sure that we're providing good content, like quality content, not good content, quality content, and quality product. So that's what I think about at the end here with these rankings. And again, Jake and I have planned out a pretty cool product, pretty cool series, I'll say, for the listeners, going over really in depth, like the ranking process as we see it, like kind of how it should go, just going through each step of it. And it's gonna be really fun. So just keep a lookout for that. It'll be on the YouTube channel. Pop in the Discord and you'll be notified for sure.
All right, let's go ahead and hop into another segment of Underdog Under the Hood. Also, Patrick Mahomes isn't QB1 anymore.
Good.
Should we Josh?
Leave us with that nugget. Nice.
I think he finished like what, top QB5 or better twice last season. So
Mahomes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the endowment effect.
I'm gonna definitely sniff this.
I'm just saying. The endowment effect. So the endowment effect describes how people tend to value items that they own more highly than they would if they did not belong to them. This then means that sellers often try to charge more for an item than it would cost elsewhere. That's just, that's basic stuff, right?
That's human nature, man.
Just like you talk about any player or any pick or whatever, you're like, hey, what would you sell them for? What would you buy them for? Oh, well, I'd sell them for a mid-second, but I wouldn't buy them for a mid-second. I don't think it's that crazy, but I think it's extremely rampant in the Dynasty community, and it's really hard to actually, when you're going through trade talks with people, to merge those two things together, where you're both like, well, shit, okay, I'll take less than I think he's worth for, and someone's gonna be like, well, shit, I'm gonna pay a little bit more than I think he's worth for, and that's usually what he's actually worth. But it's an interesting concept. Do you think that it hinders you in any type of way from moving off a player or acquiring a player, assuming that the person you're trading with is level-headed and even-keeled about the situation?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's more something that you need to be aware of. It's more of like a self-awareness thing, right? Because I do think it can prevent you from getting deals done and making, solid trades for yourself when you're constantly thinking you can't be the guy who's like, Puka's worth 3 firsts. You know what I mean? You can't be the guy who's just like over the top with their valuations constantly. You're never gonna get a deal done, and the ones you do probably aren't going to be super beneficial, and you're not going to be able to stack wins and get anywhere, right? So that's kind of how I think about it. Is like it's just another one of those psychological concepts that you need to be aware of, because I think literally every single person is probably impacted by this.
Yeah, I think in the grand scheme of things, there's so many micro players or picks that you could use to kind of help field whatever those gaps are, that it really shouldn't be such a hindrance in your process. And that's really what I tend to try and do. Like there are so many players that I find interesting one way or another. And so if I can put forth, for instance, I did this a lot this year. Dontavian Wicks early in the season, he was the type of guy that I added on to deals that looked like I lost at the very beginning. And by all means, like, he might not turn into anything moving forward, but I still feel relatively good about adding on an asset like that to a trade, even though at the very beginning, maybe I thought that the value was slightly off, because like Uriah, like Billy was saying, in this situation, my asset feels like it's a greater asset than I should be selling for. But if I can at least put on that additional piece, like I'm thinking back to even early in the season, I think it was week 2, I traded Aaron Jones and Miles Sanders, not knowing what their seasons were going to turn out like, which by all means looks great in my view, no matter who I'm getting, right? But I ended up getting Jordan Addison, who at the beginning of the season, I still had a lot of question marks about. I still do, technically. But I got him and Keaton Mitchell, right? Keaton Mitchell, unfortunately, scraped, his knees done, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is I still got that little extra piece on top that made me feel better about the deal that the other seller of Keaton Mitchell was like, okay, like I don't have that high of a view on Keaton. And that's the type of stuff that you need to do with this type of mentality, is like, don't allow it to necessarily prevent you from getting a deal done. Just try and find those small pieces that you can add on that kind of at least lessen the gap that you think that you're losing on. And that's at least how I view it.
I like the thought of Keaton Mitchell's injury, his knee injury, being described as a scrape. I don't know. You may not have meant to say that, and that's okay. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to jab you for it. I like the idea of calling his
Keaton just a scratch.
Just a flesh wound. It's just a flesh wound. Yeah. No, that's a good catch. I fucked that. Yeah, you're right.
No, that's great. I love it.
At least it wasn't his Achilles. People are back from ACL injuries. If this was like J.K. Dobbins, I was like, oh, it's just a scratch. He should be like,
through what he's been through.
Yeah, literally.
All right.
Sorry.
Off
the wheels.
All right. Another one. Something that we probably think about. When you see that meme where you have the wife laying in bed and they're both on their phones. Right. It's always the wife like, oh, he's probably thinking about other girls. And then it's always like the guy thinking about just guy stuff. This is probably like one of those things that you're just like, But like, so when you're doing your rookie drafts or your startup drafts and you have like the rookie 101, like on MFL, you have like a number that says 101, right? Versus picking the kicker as a placeholder, as we're going to do in Sleeper. Does that matter to you? Does it like mess with your head at all? I kind of view it as like when I'm trying to trade for or away the 201 versus like the 112. Like I want the 112, even though it's the same thing. Like just having the number there, like just kind of like mentally sets me straight. So does this affect you guys at all when thinking about it? Like having Brandon Aubrey instead of the 101? You know what I mean?
I think so.
Yeah, this is something that I have thought about for a long time. I think it really impacts it. Like when there's kickers in there, I think not only can you forget about them, but you just don't think about them the same way as if it was the 101 sitting in a queue to select.
Yeah,
like that feels different, and you know exactly which pick you're getting every time. Not that you can't go and count, not that somebody's not keeping a list, but you know exactly what pick it is. And I think there is a psychological difference between it. And I think that the kicker one, you can take advantage of it potentially more, because I think more people, especially newcomers, are going to be less familiar with it, and it's going to be less identifiable during the draft.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, fuck Sleeper for taking so long to put draft future rookie draft picks in there. It's really not a huge uptick in terms of work. Like, we're not like they have the literal picks on their back end. Like, they're able to do it when you actually assign those picks, and then you can trade them. Like, they have the literal numbers on rosters. Like, they exist within their ecosystem. Just fucking make a separate tab of data that says picks and then allow me to choose them. Like, it's really not that hard. Like, I don't really get it. It's frustrating. It really is frustrating.
It is, yes.
I think what we'll see from doing the DU2 startup is DU4 startup is
rewind.
I think we'll see less rookie picks being taken as early as we've seen.
I mean, we'll be able to literally look back. We'll be able to look back at the other drafts, and we'll be able to see, like, in the startup, where were these picks taken, and that'll be an easy one to go and look at. That'll be an easy one to go and look at. Okay, so that's fun.
All right, the psychology of receiving a good offer, even if revoked.
Did we already? Actually, I think we already talked about this last week.
I think we did.
Yes, so we can skip that. Sorry.
All right. Are you guys okay with later picks when you're comfortable with the eval skills? I'll say this goes off of just kind of like how this could be like our 6th year in Dynasty, something like that, going on 6 years. And I've got to the point where I've just really hated fourth round picks, third round picks. I kind of got snob with it. And maybe after talking to you guys, maybe I should value him a little bit more. Maybe I should be a little more confident in who I think I'm taking. But I still like when you hear people on podcasts like, hey, throw in a third. Like, I don't want someone to throw in a third. Like, I don't want that. Like, I don't get your third away from me. Like, you keep it. Maybe I should change that a little bit. But how do you guys feel?
I love it. I want those picks. I want to get off of my picks personally because I'm hoping that I'm finishing top 3. So I want someone else's third, especially early in the season. If someone doesn't think that they have, maybe this has happened a lot, especially in some of the DU leagues. Like some people think that their shit doesn't stink and they're going to finish high up in the standings. And you'll see that they end up finishing like bottom 4, bottom 3. And you're like, I just basically took your 302, 303, 304 for free. Like for free. You threw it on top of that deal thinking you won it all. And you were throwing on this additional value. And now I'm potentially looking at a player that I was valuing potentially late second round and fell to me. Like that's the way that I want to look at it. Like I want to look at it as a situation to take advantage of the draft itself. Get me off of my 311, get me off of my 312. If I have it, sure, I'll take advantage of it. But I'd much rather get maybe towards the end of the season which will end up happening, like that deal with like Dontavian Wicks. Like if I can get Dontavian Wicks for a third, at the end of the season, something like that, then the next year I can get an actual third for a player that I am more interested in that looks like a 303, a 304. I'm in a great spot. And that's kind of the way that I try and look at these like additive picks that people are so easily throwing away, which is funny enough because I am also saying I easily will throw away mine, but it is kind of in its own vacuum. Like you need to understand what that pick is going to look like and really what you're trying to strive to do for that season. And I think what we've come to learn, especially in Dynasty, is that not everything goes to plan, but I think a lot of people don't know how to acclimate to the adversity that happens within the season. And you need to try and take advantage of that as an opposing manager and try and get that kind of what will be in their mind, the 311 and what in your mind should be the 304, 305, 306.
Yeah. I'm also not sure that everybody is doing the legwork and research that Jake or any of us are doing when we're making it when we're making a trade, going to really see like what their roster is like and what everybody else's rosters are like and like what the probability of where their pick's going to be. I think a lot of people might look at their own roster and go, yeah, this roster can compete. So let me just trade this pick and not really consider like, yeah, maybe your roster could compete in a different league. Like maybe this league is like just, they have teams that are built different and you didn't go check and notice that you're at the very least going to be in middle of the pack if you don't make some different moves. You know what I mean? And so I think that's definitely part of like what Jake's talking about there. But I talked a lot about how like third and fourth round picks are like championship tokens. So I definitely want to have some of those to like throw around later in the season for sure. But I also want some of those in case things don't work out because the way I'm thinking about this too is like I've become a lot more comfortable in my overall prospect evaluations. So if I'm more comfortable in my evaluations and I feel like I have that slight edge, albeit slight, I have that edge amongst the groups I'm playing with, then should I value those picks more for myself? You know what I mean? In that like maybe I have a potential of a slightly higher hit rate. Again, maybe it's very, very slight, but is it worth kind of prioritizing those a little bit more when it suits me, right? Not trying to like go out and get them. But again, like Jake's saying, like people who don't value them that much and want to just throw them in on a deal, like I should probably be more willing to push for those and take those and try to get to that point because I am feeling more comfortable in my evaluation. And it's just something I've been thinking about. Like if you do feel that way, and you're comfortable with the people that are evaluating for you, whatever it is, right? Like if you're comfortable with the process you've come up with, then maybe you should maybe think of those a little bit differently and not just say third, fourth round picks don't matter. Because I think that over and over and over again, like that's proven not to be true. They holistically are low hit rate picks for sure, but there are still valuable players that come out of those groups. It's bottom line.
Absolutely.
This is my favorite one. This next one's my favorite one.
Better say with a zing.
Our last underdog under the hood. What's going through our brains?
A barrage of garbage. That's
I like it.
I'm saying it.
I can see you kind of want to like retool that a little bit, but it's very close. It's very, very.
I like it. I like the critique, my guy. All right.
Yeah, I'm pretty good with the wordplay here. So, handling a barrage of terrible trade offers. Trademark Billy Beeman, the barrage of garbage. And
my man.
Yeah. So
looks like he's speaking French.
Yeah.
It does that movie.
Je m'appelle Uriah.
Yeah. So man.
Fun fact: I took French for 2 years in high school. I should have took Spanish because obviously.
Yeah.
But I will tell you what: I was in a classroom of like 26 people, and 24 of them were girls. Take French, my dudes. Take French, my dudes. Anyway, so how do you guys handle it? We've all been in a situation where you get a bunch of trade offers. The most unfortunate situation is when like it's the same guy and it's over and over and over and over. I think the simple solution is just like be like a duck and let the water roll off your back. Like, don't let it affect you. But sometimes what you could really do is in the conversation. For me, I try to just like use my last statement in the chat to the individual with no open doors, right? Like, so in my last trade talks that I was just kind of done with, I was like, yeah, that's not a problem for me because I'm not trying to trade them away anyway. There's not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot you can say after that. I'm really looking like a dick, like a Mormon or whatever. Like, hey, knocking on your door, like, get off my lawn. But yeah, I just try to. I try to use my words in a way that lets the individual know that I'm not really open to any more of these offers coming my way anytime soon.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. I just try. It's like Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. It's like just keep scrolling. Like I try not to get caught up, and I'm just like, all right, like you're gonna reject. Like, I'm just like ignore, like what I don't know. I just don't let it bother me. But I know that certain people like can't handle it. Certain people, I mean, just like social media, certain people are just like, I'm deactivating, I'm done, like I'm out. You know what I mean? And it's like, I get it. Like I get it to an extent, but for me, I just always felt like it was healthier not to let things get to me that way, or to try not to. I certainly still let, some things get to me. But I try not to let these kind of things get to me. I try to remember it's a game. Try to remember that, there's trolls out there. There are people who are trying to get to you, who are trying to push your buttons, who are trying to push you to a place where you're just like, all right, let me get this done. Let me just make a trade and get him off my back. Like, these are real things people are trying to do.
Oh yeah. It's like a real tactic. Yeah,
it is. And it's not a mistake. Like, so, you do have to be aware and be able to defend yourself psychologically from those tactics. And that's how I try to approach it, and try to realize that like there's a strategy going on here, and like it might not be like this person's persona, and try not to be like this person's a complete maniac asshole. Like maybe they're just trying to do their best to play this game in the best way they know how, and it ends up being a little annoying to me, but like I'll just keep it pushing.
Yeah, I'm on all the same boards as this. The one thing that I will say that has helped me is I just respond with like really ridiculous GIFs. I don't know if anyone knows this about me, but I can send like really uncomfortable GIFs that make people like, they're just like, what? And that's kind of how I like to approach this. Like, if you're gonna make me think I'm like poorly of you, I'm gonna make you think poorly of me type situation. That's kind of the way I like try and go back at it. It's like, and I have fun with it. Like I don't take anything personally with it. The one thing I will add is that if it does happen to be someone who has your own phone number, like have a legitimate conversation with them. Like if this is a situation where like someone is actually like blowing up your phone, like they're sending you a text message, or you're seeing them in person, this is a home league, like just be real with them. Just be like, hey, send me whatever you want on the app, whatever we're playing on. But outside of that, like, don't contact me about trades. Like, and like, I don't mean that in a rude way. I just mean like, be very real with people. It's much better to be straight up and just be honest with someone than to like hone all this negative energy that you're just not presenting out to the rest of the world, especially in home leagues, especially with legitimate friends of yours. Just be real with people. People you don't know on the internet, fuck them, send them weird gifts. That's the way I handle it.
I do like that advice though, to keep it real, because that is the other thing I was going to say is I should be straightforward is what I was going to say is like, with even people that I don't really know, like if they're going to send me something that I know that I personally think is outlandish, and I think that I'm a pretty straight shooter in terms of like fair values. Like I can talk about fair values, like get out of here with the Cowboys garbage. But like I can talk some fair values. So if you're gonna send me something that's way off, like I'm gonna tell you it's way off. I mean, I had a discussion going on today that was like fair trade counters going back and forth, and then one came flying in that was just like out of left field, and I'm like, all right, we've gone too far, my guy. Like, what are we doing here? We're going the wrong direction. Like it's like we gotta take a step back here and realize what we're doing. And I feel like I feel comfortable saying that to anybody, because I do again feel like most people know what they're doing and it's a strategy thing. And if you shove it in their face, this will work with me a lot of times too. If you shove something in my face, like I can't deny that. Like, yes, you're right, obviously. So now we're on level playing field. Now let's talk shop. Like that's how that's kind of how it works, unless you just want the conversation to end. So that's how I approach it.
You got to set boundaries
in life. Yes.
In life. All right. Want to hit on some trades and non-trades? Get out of here.
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right. This is interesting because you don't see this happen very often. But Darren Waller traded. Well, it's been a while. It's been a wild ride as a Waller owner, non-owner. My whole entire Dynasty career started off with like one of the worst trades I ever made. Anyway, Darren Waller for 26 third and 25 fourth. Tight end premium. Let's assume.
I'm sticking Waller here personally.
Yeah.
I'd rather write it out than stick with that. Honestly,
same.
Yeah. I wonder if in 6 months we're gonna feel the same. But I do look at this and I think like you could get more. So.
Billy, 26 third, bro. Come on.
That's what I said. I look at this and you can get more than that. So I'm like,
No, well, you said looking in 6 months.
I said I wonder if
I can still get 26 third.
Can you? What if Darren Waller doesn't play?
If he turns into Kenny Galladay, obviously the Giants are prone to this, but like he could turn into Kenny Galladay. I get it, but like, come on, dude. Like, fine, I'll take a fucking 26 fourth. Put me in that situation. I don't care. No, I'm not taking this deal right now.
Yeah. All right. Pickens. I don't have any Pickens, which is kind of
no, it's good.
Yeah, it's fine. Pickens in a 304 for Barkley and the 411.
411. I like how
in the info. Barkley and some information. Or
that's my kid's. It's my kid's birthday. 411.
Nice. Yeah.
Nice.
Aries.
Shoot, I think Barkley still has a little bit of juice. I think I'll take the running back over the wide receiver.
It's my trade. I mean, I can tell you what I would rather do.
I'll speak before. At first, honestly, I was actually leaning Barkley's side because I do think that he is technically a more premium asset that, if put into the right situation this offseason, could potentially see more value. But I think in terms of longevity, in terms of the valuation of like where this asset currently sits and what their likelihood of value is going to be moving forward versus the other asset, I see Pickens being the one that is going to potentially increase in value. Whereas if Saquon does increase in value, it's going to be like a little bubble. It'll be like a little blip, and you have to take advantage of that little peak, which I'm sure Billy could do, but he wanted to capitalize now before potentially being the starting running back on Carolina this year or something like that, right? Like that's the kind of situation that you're trying to prevent yourself from being in. It's like, well, it was pretty hard to sell Miles Sanders. So it's going to be, and I'm not saying Miles Sanders is better than Saquon Barkley, but I think it's going to be just as equally hard to sell up Saquon if he's on a team like that. And so getting a third on top of it seems like a pretty good deal, especially because it's a 304. I go Pickens 304.
I think we're thinking with our redraft brains here a little too much. Like we look at our rebuilder rankings, Pickens is well ahead of Barkley, and that may be all due to me. I've been pretty just looking at the Barkley situation, 26 years old, I've been pretty down on him, and I have been dropping him in the rankings a good deal. And Pickens, 22 years old, not my favorite person, not my favorite player, but he's clearly very talented. And I just for some reason feel like they're going to get that QB situation changed in Pittsburgh to something a little bit more established. A veteran, maybe. They don't want to go forward with Pickett, clearly. They just sat him in a playoff game. So
Baker Mayfield?
I think, listen, I think I think I would like something else. But I want Baker Mayfield with like Mike Evans, not George Pickens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I just think Pickens, again, at 22 has so much more life left, already is probably nearly valued around Barkley in like market value wise, like KTC and all that stuff. So I think I'm just going to, yeah, and I think I'm just getting ahead of it here. Again, this is kind of like the CMC conversation a little bit, just like way more accentuated and crappy players, but they're not actually crappy players. Saquon Barkley is a really good player, he's just old, and so that's that's kind of I'm making a rebuild move here, knowing that my team here is, I think this was DU too, been to the finals multiple times, hasn't won it. And definitely needs to be, I think, a little bit rebuilding going on. Some churn needs to take place for this team to ever make it back. So I'm kind of looking to the future.
Yeah, I mean, and you're looking at the two DU2 champions right here.
So. Yeah, look at that.
That's ridiculous.
It's our league, bud. It's our league. Doesn't really matter.
Oh my God! Two-time finals appearance, just gets no love, no respect, no respect.
It must hurt to lose to us. The worst part is, like, man, I should have won. I should have won the first year too, to be honest. If it wasn't for Jalen Hurts and Tua and Jalen Hurts, when two starting quarterbacks got injured during playoffs, how are you supposed to?
You didn't make it there with Derek Carr and I don't even know what else I had in Daniel Jones, maybe. I don't even know what I had. I was
starting Taylor Heineke in the playoffs. I wasn't fucking hell.
2024 was a crazy season.
Yeah. I don't know how I won. I looked at my roster in DU2 to start the season, was like, how? I don't
Startups, man. Startups
not that good.
Startups are weird years. But, yeah.
All right. Last one. Save the rest for next time. All right. 205 for Jameson Williams. I'm just gonna say take the 205.
Easily for me.
I was never a JMO guy. I believe Billy and I both were just not JMO people for various different reasons. He hasn't done anything for me that I don't think I could kind of replace with the 205.
He didn't have any nuance. He didn't really carry much nuance in his game coming out. Not a very refined route runner, in my opinion. More built off of athleticism. And I think we're seeing that kind of pan out in the league as well. Before we get out of here, Jake, did you want to go over any of these trades? Were they yours? Like, do you want to hit one before we go? I don't want to like.
Oh, yeah. Let's just go one more, just because I think it's the craziest one on the sheet, and it'll take us maybe like 2 minutes to cover. Our buddy Matt decided that he was going to go in explosive diarrhea mode on his team, and he just sold everything as fast as he possibly could. Pretty impressive. He traded DJ Moore, Deebo Samuel, David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift for, I'll start with the highest value assets, the 106, the 206, Jerry Jeudy, Luke Musgrave, not Casey Musgraves, and the 311.
The disrespect to Jeudy. Oh my goodness. The third most valuable asset.
206 and Jeudy, in my mind,
are
kind of equivalent in my
It's fair. Yeah. No, I'm just talking shit.
No, I know. So I know. I think we saw how the internalized Discord spoke about this, but I really kind of just wanted to hash out kind of rebuilding strategy with this. And wanted to kind of give it to the two of you to just talk about what, if you have those 4 assets on your team, DJ Moore, Deebo Samuel, David Montgomery, and DeAndre Swift, what are you doing with them to maximize that value?
Selling them individually.
Yeah, I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. So
instead of packaging them, because really what I see here is DJ Moore's a first.
Yep.
Debo's a first.
Yep.
Swift and Monty together, that's like a first
and second, maybe
something like that, right?
Yeah.
So sounded like the dog guy. That's a first.
We'll be conservative here. Yeah, dog, Monty first. Yeah. Judy's somewhere of a second. Musgrave is probably very wild range there. It's not even a guy I would be trying to get on my team for any reason right now.
Yep.
106, awesome. 206, awesome. I think he's a little legitimate, like first off.
Maybe like a first and second off. Like it's Billy and I were talking about this a little bit via text, and I did the same exact evaluation that you just did. I basically said 3 firsts and a second. It's kind of how I saw those 4 players pairing up.
Yeah.
And I just don't see that sitting on the other side.
No, I don't either.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Monty might not actually be, I mean, he's older, right? But he's on a good team. Swift hasn't been amazing. I get it. Like these guys could be 1 year away of not even really having any significant value to your team. So it's a possibility that Matt thinks that getting off of Monty and Swift now at a discount is maybe getting ahead of the game. I don't personally agree with that right now, but I can kind of see it. DJ Moore is not DJ Moore and Deebo aren't really 2 players that I'm trying to move off the team if I'm rebuilding. I think they're still young enough that they're going to help you for a while. So this is just not a trade I would have made.
Yeah, I think at the very least, like, I mean, I totally agree with like everything that was said. It's really more, my main strategy here would have just been to sell them separately.
Yes.
Because I know that I could probably get a first for at least 2 of these assets.
Yes.
Minimum. Just like a first for DJ Moore and a first for Deebo is like, you know, even if they're back end, like you can get them there. Yeah, so it needed to be like 2 firsts and a second, and I agree with Jake. I don't really see that on the Judy side. The 106 is a premium asset. Don't get me wrong, it's a premium asset, and you know, maybe in Matt's mind, that made up some of the difference in not getting you know, a whole nother first, because maybe it, you know, he wasn't garnering, none of these players were garnering, you know, anything but late first, and he saw the 106 is just, you know, a better asset all around. I didn't look at his team necessarily, but he usually has pretty decent builds where you know, he can churn and make something out of it. But this is definitely not a deal I would have made. I don't like this. I don't like it one bit.
To your point, and it's a good point with regards to the 106 being a like basically borderline premium asset. Like if we're talking about anywhere between the 102 to 104, I think I could agree with that. And I could see that gap lessening significantly. Mm-hmm. But at the 106 and who I think falls to that, maybe you're getting like a Brock Bowers, depending on how that league drafts. Maybe you're getting a quarterback that might fall out of the top 5 that you might be high on, but are you? Yeah. Like Drake May, I think, is a guy who could easily fall out of that top 5, depending on landing spot. It just really puts me in a precarious situation where I'm just like, what am I trying to get from this pick? And that's kind of how I want to view the pick, right? Especially now that I know that there's a number associated to it. It's not like a future pick where I don't have value or I don't know the value. Now that I know the value, it makes it a little bit more, the structure of it makes me scared of how I'm going to find my future, my feet, because I think I gave up too much value fast.
And I think that 206 is going to need to essentially be nearly Sam Laporta-esque and not Kendre Miller. You know what I mean? So 100%. it like if that happens, like he's going to feel fine probably. a couple years down the road. Like if he just smashes those 2 picks and, you know, Judy's a role player and he can maybe get another second out of him down the road or something like that from somebody, like then it might work itself out. But I just think there's a lot of meat left on the bone here is really what it is, you know, like premium asset in there. But there probably should have been maybe one more nearly premium asset or, you know, top end asset, that being a late first kind of thing. So
yeah.
It's a tough one, man. I've made really bad deals before, so like I'm not like sitting here trying to trash anybody. Like we've all made some bonehead moves. It's just trying to evaluate it with a level head, you know.
Yeah, I don't think it's like quote unquote bad or anything. I think the best way, if I were given advice, which I guess technically that's what we do here, probably one of the best ways I think you could probably fix that is to take your 206 and your 311 and try to turn that into like a 201, 202 or something like that.
Honestly, I would try to trade every single asset except for the 106 off of that deal right now and see if I can make them greater or higher picks, or like turn Judy in the 3rd into a 2nd, or turn Judy in the 2nd into a 1st, or like he's, you know, some combination of that and make it whole. I've made trades like I remember literally in Console Wars. You know, sorry, Uriah's at Uriah's expense here, but I made the trade with Christian Watson where I got Christian Watson and Judy maybe, or I got the 2 players or whatever it was, and I traded him away immediately. I forgot exactly what the deal was, but I traded them away immediately because I realized it was something that I like probably shouldn't have done. And I think that's something that he probably should realize here is like, you know, I left some meat on the bone. Let me go get it. Let me go, you know, chew it off. Like, let me figure out a way to get the rest of my my meal.
Do you think he could take what he received and trade it for the 103, 104?
Like all of it?
Mm-hmm. All 5 pieces.
Yeah, for sure. I think he could definitely. Nah, I mean, probably the 104, but I think he could definitely move up. Yeah, for sure.
I think depending on what the build looks like, and if he doesn't have the quarterback situation, that might be the move. Or you could even potentially get Neighbors or Adunze, whoever you think is higher. I have Neighbors higher, but like you can get potentially an elite wide receiver as well for your future, especially considering that he's now given up 3 wide receivers that we know in a couple of days. So yeah, something to be mindful of.
All right, the wife's tripping at me. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
That's all.
All right. All right, thank you everyone for listening to the episode of Dynasty Underdog. Check us out on Spotify if you can. It helps us out, or potentially will help us out. Follow us on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Dynasty Underdog, at Uriah Dawkins, at Willie Beeman DFF, and at Jake Abrams. Join our Discord. It's free. It's awesome. It's popping. There's always Dynasty talk in there. Just great folks. Willing to talk about anything Dynasty related, or even not even having to do with Dynasty. It's just a good community. So, and check us out on YouTube. I know Billy's working on that to make it better. So check us out. Other than that, you guys have a good night.